Hello, lords and ladies. Today we're going to talk about the rise of Hitler, and that means we have to talk about Hitler and his beliefs. Today's objectives, and you can pause this at some point if you need to. It's going to be up for about a minute. We're going to look at analyzing the extent to which the Great Depression is going to lead to Hitler's rise. So why does the Great Depression play a role in Hitler coming to power? We're going to go back to that Treaty of Versailles that ended World War I, and we're going to analyze the extent to which it also contributed to the rise of Hitler and him coming to power in Nazi Germany, as well as looking at how he sets up a totalitarian state in Nazi Germany. We've talked about the features of totalitarianism with both Stalin, Mussolini, and now it will also be with Hitler. So those things that we've discussed: the secret police, the one-party control of the state, obedience to the ruler without question, controlling the media, controlling the youth, all of these things are going to also be present in Nazi Germany. So the objectives, again, if you need more time, you can pause it, but we are looking at the Great Depression and the Treaty of Versailles and how they lead to Hitler's rise, and also how he sets up a totalitarian Germany. First, we have to look at what's in place when Hitler is starting to come back to power. After World War I, the Allies set up a democratic republic in Germany. It's called the Weimar Republic. It was set up again after World War I. Once that government is established, it's forced then to sign the Treaty of Versailles to end the war. So when we look at how the German people are going to feel about this government, in the beginning, they might feel a bit betrayed, and Hitler is among those people who feels very betrayed by the Weimar Republic, saying that it's not a legitimate government and that it brought the harshness that the Treaty of Versailles is going to bring to Germany is the fault of the Weimar Republic. So the Weimar Republic was doing actually relatively well in Germany. It allowed a lot of artistic freedom and a lot of personal freedoms that the Germans were not accustomed to. So people were doing well under it until the Great Depression hit. So that, combined with all of the parts of the Treaty of Versailles, meaning the reparations, having to pay all of that money to all the other countries, Germany is having a hard time already. We talked about the hyperinflation. You saw kids playing with the money like it was, pyramids. Great Depression then is going to make it even worse in Germany. So instead of just the hyperinflation now, you're also dealing with a lack of available capital, money, because the Americans are no longer giving out loans. So people, when they're upset and when they're not getting their needs met, quite often they do blame the government for that. So the Great Depression, that's the role it's really going to play. The Treaty of Versailles for the harshness that it brings upon Germany, having to take the blame, it's humiliating. Then having to pay for everything, not being able to have a military, all of those things that Treaty of Versailles did to Germany are also now going to combine with the effects of the Great Depression. And that's what we're going to see happen with this Weimar Republic. If you need more time to write, you're going to want to pause it now, because we are going to move on. I want to show you a few pictures. I'm going to show you this is the Weimar Republic, established in 1919, again at the end of World War I, in June 21st. So that's the government that's set up. And under this Weimar Republic, look at this mark. Mark is German money, okay? And it's $1 million bill here. So it gives you that sense again of the hyperinflation. Now into this mix comes a young Adolf Hitler. Adolf Hitler had fought in World War I. He was betrayed by the end of this war, angry about the end of this war. This is him as a corporal in the German military. Remember, Hitler is not German. He's Austrian. Okay, he was born in Austria in 1889, so he is forced to join the German army because the Austrian army won't take him. So in 1919, when he returns from the war, he goes back to Germany. Ironically, he was actually hired by the German government to spy on the National Socialist German Workers' Party. He was originally at those meetings as a government spy and reporting back what he was discovering about this party. But what happened was he gets drawn right into the fold, and he identifies with what these men are saying, what this party believes, and he then joins the party. And within 2 years of starting out by spying on it, he actually becomes its leader. So he really resonates with the idea that the Treaty of Versailles has to be overturned, that it was just an absolute miscarriage of justice, that Germany is being treated unfairly, and that it needs to go. He also views that Weimar Republic, that Weimar government, as needing to go because they are traitors to Germany. They are allied collaborators. He calls them the Jewish Marxist conspirators, and he is very much convinced that these two things need to go. He chooses the Nazi Party as his means of, expelling these influences from Germany and overturning that treaty. So by 1921, as the leader of the party, he then starts to organize himself a small makeshift army. They're called the Stormtroopers, or the SS sometimes you'll hear, the brown shirts you'll hear, so there's a lot of different names for them. But basically they serve the same purpose as Mussolini's black shirts did. They would go out in the streets and take care of people who were rioting. They would go out and stop any chaos that was occurring so that people started to look to Hitler as a person who could restore order and who could make their lives less chaotic. So these combat squads are, like for Mussolini with the black shirts, going to be a way for him to establish himself as someone who can help. Now, Hitler is impatient. He wants to have power in Germany, and so he decides he's going to do it very, very quickly. So he had watched Mussolini. Mussolini had threatened again to march on Rome, to go in and just take the government. So Hitler kind of takes a little bit of a lead from that, except that he decides to do it illegally. He does what's called, sometimes it's called the beer hall putsch, or the Munich putsch, okay? And what that means is he literally walked into a bar where politicians were meeting after their meetings, and he jumped up on the table, and this was him with several of his SS followers, the stormtroopers, jumps up on a table, pulls out his gun, puts it in the air, and says, "The National Socialist Workers' Revolution has begun." And he's promptly pulled off the table, put into cuffs, and arrested and thrown in jail, along with several of his other supporters. So while he's in prison, he's going to get some time to write down his ideas into a book called Mein Kampf. So here he is with some of his co-conspirators dressed in their traditional German beer hall clothing with the lederhosen. He is pictured here in prison with some of the Nazis who went with him. They said that he was a broken man in prison. But while he was there, he writes Mein Kampf, which you see here, complete with the swastika. This was required reading for the people of Germany during his rule. Now the next one, you might want to pause to read it, but basically it's saying that it's a news article of the time in 1924 when he's being released from prison, and saying that he plans on returning to Austria, which couldn't have been further from the truth. So if you take a pause and read that. Okay, so what happens is he gets out of prison. Now, when he went to prison, he talked his way down from a 5-year sentence down to less than a year, about he ended up serving, around a year. And that shows you the power of his oratory skills. He is a great public speaker. Most Germans ignore him. That's the crazy guy who jumped on the table, right? That's the crazy guy who went to prison. But when the Great Depression hits, that's when Hitler starts to become more and more attractive to the people. And he's going to use those brown shirts just the way that Mussolini used the black shirts, to where they're out in the streets, the ones who seem to be maintaining order. And so President Hindenburg at the time is kind of forced to invite Hitler into the fold. And what he figures is, if I keep him close to me, he's my puppet. He does what I tell him to do. And unfortunately for him, well, Hindenburg is going to die. But also, he's underestimating the power of Hitler. He's underestimating what this man wants to do and what his ambitions really are. So what you're going to see is that Hitler's beliefs, they were certainly written out in Mein Kampf, which I'll show you a quote from at the end of the movie, but they were extreme, okay? And they fit in, try to think about the systems that we've talked about and tell me what Hitler really is. So, first belief that he has is this extreme form of nationalism. Return Germany to its former glory. The Holy Roman Empire is the First Reich. The Second Reich is under Bismarck. Germany under Hitler is now going to be this Third Reich. Remember, the Holy Roman Empire, huge, enormous empire, probably the strongest in German history at that point. Then, under Bismarck, remember, he unified Germany, brought all Germans together in one country. Now Hitler is going to rule over this, what he calls the Third Reich. And he says that this master German race is going to rule in Europe for 1,000 years, a millennia. So when you guys are looking at that, a millennium is not even close to what he's going to do. The next part of this, look at that idea in the Third Reich of the German master race. Hitler, you're talking about actual racism, okay? He, in Mein Kampf, writes extensively on the Germans being a superior race. He calls them Aryans. His concept of Aryans, though, is mythical. It does not exist. The Aryans, if you remember from Global 1, were actually an Indian race, an Indo-European race. So the fact that he talks about this at length in Mein Kampf with zero to prove it, all right, but it shows you the racism. Here you can see the extreme nationalism. He would always be depicted in this kind of way where Germany's strong, he's strong, and you see the Nazi flag right behind him. Okay, the other facets of his beliefs, the other major beliefs that he had, we know, of course, about his anti-Semitic beliefs, that Jews were inferior, they're the enemies of Germany, they're the enemies in his mind of all people, and that they need to, in the beginning, he thinks, be controlled and maybe forced to leave, you know, deported, encouraged to get out of Germany. And that's where he's going to start. But we know that he goes considerably further than that in terms of his beliefs about the Jewish people. He also believed in what he called Lebensraum, and in German that means living space, living room. Okay, so Lebensraum, essentially what he's saying is Germany must grow. So think about what that means. For a country to grow, to get larger, there's really only a few ways that that can happen, and most of them have to do with war, with fighting. So looking at all of that, Hitler shares a lot of the same beliefs as who else that we've talked about. You should be thinking Mussolini. Hitler is a fascist. We're going to see that. So fascism is what Hitler is all about. He also, if you're a fascist, you are totalitarian. Every fascist country is a totalitarian state, meaning that the people are strictly controlled. In Germany, again, we talked about the idea, one political party is allowed only in these countries. In Stalin's Russia, we saw communism. In the Communist Party, the Bolsheviks. In Mussolini's Italy, we saw the fascists. In Germany, we're going to see the Nazis. Hitler, to keep the people in line and to read out any kind of opposition to him, anybody who disagrees with him, he has a secret police, the Gestapo, that's going to go out and terrorize all of his critics. Now again, we saw the same thing with the Soviets, okay, and the communists in Russia with the Cheka. Here's Hitler with his brown shirts, his early Gestapo. And you're going to see now here are Muller and Heydrich. And they're with the other Gestapo members. So they're some of his biggest lieutenants, the people that he trusts the most. Now, in a totalitarian state, we know that the aspects of your life are controlled by the ruling party. In Hitler's Germany, that party is the Nazis. He does also seek to control religion to a point. He is wanting the German people to be Protestants, and that goes back, again, into that extremist nationalism. Martin Luther led the Protestant Reformation. We're going to keep it with the Protestants. Anybody who is Catholic, as well as Jewish, we know, okay, were persecuted. So Catholics were not welcome in Hitler's Germany either. You had to pretty much convert or deny that you were Catholic. So this is how he's going to rule his state. And again, you see a lot in common with Mussolini, who he idolized, but you also see a lot in common with people who he didn't like. Okay, education. They're going to rewrite the textbooks, and all of these textbooks are going to put out there the Nazi racial views. Anti-Semitic, hatred of the Jews, that the Jews are the Germans are a master race, and that the Jews are inferior. He's also going to root out any kind of writings that are against him. So he would actually have public book burnings where it's a big, like a bonfire event that people would come out to and burn any books that Hitler did not deem appropriate for the Reich. Any art that's produced is going to have to support Hitler and his government. It is propaganda. So how does he set up his country? You see how he gets total control and how he controls the lives of the people. But now, what are his actual programs going to be? How does he get the people to follow him, essentially, is what we're looking at here. Because, running around saying, you're the master race, all of these people, maybe your neighbor, your next door neighbor, your best friend, now all of these people are inferior to you, that's not necessarily going to resonate with all people. They're not all going to follow that. So what else is he doing that really changes people's lives and makes them loyal to him? So we have to look at his economic policies. The first thing he does is very much, again, like Mussolini, is that the government is going to control capitalism. So there is limited capitalism. You are able to own your own business, keep your own money, but they want strict control over what's being produced. He starts works programs to end the unemployment that's created by the Great Depression so that people are going back to work and they can support their families. Again, their biggest, deepest needs. The next thing he does is he starts to rearm Germany. He starts to rebuild the military, build up their weapons, and that's going to stimulate the economy. But it also, if you take a look, here are some German panzers, new tanks that he's making. He's defying the Treaty of Versailles, if you take a look, and he's defying the League of Nations. So when you look at this cartoon, you're seeing Hitler is just literally getting rid of the Treaty of Versailles. So that, people wonder, why didn't anybody step in and do anything about this while it was going on? So, in terms of his social policies, Hitler wants very much to shape the young. He believes that the Hitler youth camps are where his bread and butter is going to be. He's going to train these kids. He's going to have them schooled in his mindset from their youngest ages, so that they grow up believing what he wants them to believe and wanting to be soldiers, wanting to serve their country, wanting to be the best that they can be for Germany and no other reason. The ladies have a very special job here, and that is to create more soldiers for him. So they start to push these women out of the job so that the men can go back to work more so than the women. And it's a two-pronged process. The women are now going to be able to stay home and have more children, which gives Hitler the soldiers and the little mommies that he's going to want. So you see a lot of social change under here, and not necessarily all people are going to be happy about it. The next thing you see is a very, very public and concerted effort to get the Jews to leave Germany. Hitler is anti-Semitic. He has a hatred for Jewish people. He refers to the Jews as a separate race, trying to keep them separate from the rest of his country. It starts out with Hitler. His plan, you really do see it progress. At first, he's trying to drive Jews out of Germany. He tries to change the laws, and we'll talk about that in the next video. He wants to get them to leave. So he starts trying to make it more and more uncomfortable for the Jewish people to stay in the country. And part of that program is also then teaching these young kids these hateful ideas where they are going to treat Jewish people as separate entities as well. So you separate them from the rest of society in an attempt to then try to drive them out. To give you an idea of how much control and how he's everywhere, here is a German stamp of the time. We're going to take a look next at a German youth group, and you can see, these boys are intently there doing the Heil Hitler, just looking for him. What's he going to say? What's he going to do? Here is a propaganda poster that should show you and give you an idea, okay, that he's viewed as the high father of the German youth and that he is the one. Here you go with the girls. You have a very important role to play, which is to create me new soldiers, and looking lovingly up towards the leader, okay? Hitler said in Mein Kampf, no more than nature desires the mating of weaker with stronger individuals, even less does she desire the blending of a higher with a lower race. So he does not want to see the Jews mixing in with what he considers the German master race. So all these ideas, though they sound awful to us and frighteningly rude and awful to us, these things are accepted in Nazi Germany. Not only accepted, but encouraged. and we'll leave it there for now.